Good evening, everybody. Remember when I used to do this whole streaming thing? Well, I'm back. I owe you some explanations in terms of where I have been. So last week, I really was not planning on taking Friday off, nor was I really planning on taking Monday off. But that is how that turned out. Long story short, the actually, I'm trying to remember exactly how this all transpired. I seem to recall having a very late day at work on Friday, and I was originally planning on doing the stream, but by the time I kind of got home, and the fact that I just felt completely shattered, kind of got in the way of actually doing any kind of broadcast. But what I wasn't planning on was essentially I worked through the weekend, and this has just been a complete, like, go to 11, work hard week for me. And I have found that I am actually in my element when I hit moments like that, which from a job satisfaction point of view is wonderful, and from a broadcasting point of view is just a complete catastrophe. So it was pretty clear on Monday there was no way that I was going to be able to get streaming. I think Wednesday there might have been a shot, but I even showed up about a half hour late to the local game dev meetup, which is why I didn't broadcast on Wednesday. But that did mean that I really wanted to stream today, even though I knew I'd be starting later because the work thing is still sort of ongoing. It's more stable, more than solved. But I have certainly missed all of you, and I appreciate the fact that there are still some of you who show up. So I'm going to take a minute here and jump into Cyberpunk, and then we'll see where it goes. Now, as far as the other stuff that I've been playing, like the intention is to kind of get back on track with the streams. So this will mean that we'll be back to some Uplink. We'll be back to some Uncle Chop's Rocket Shop. It means we'll be back to some Ace Attorney. And I do want to sort of knock off a few of the games which I'd started a long, long time ago and never really completed. I suppose you could say the same about Cyberpunk, except at least they released a DLC in between then. But, one thing at a time. I'm trying to repair something of a schedule, let alone, well, I guess right now I'm trying to repair regular streaming. I think Friday was the first day that I missed a stream unexpectedly in years. So maybe I'm wrong on that, but didn't feel great. But I think given how work was, I didn't feel super bad about it, except for the fact that I didn't warn people. Obviously, that's the one thing I don't feel great about. But I feel that it was sort of an earned absence. I do plan on taking Canada Day off, so just as a warning for that. But otherwise, third Wednesday of the month and Canadian holidays are the only ones I expect to be away for. What else? But yeah, independent of... So again, kind of play it by ear as far as the actual games that I stream will do. I did find a DS. I can't remember if I said this already, but I have my old DS, and I've been playing Professor Layton, and I think the international title for it was Pandora's Box, but I believe the version I have is called the Diabolical Box. And I quite like the Professor Layton games. So I was wrong in saying that it was inspired by Sherlock Holmes. Apparently, the inspirations were the Ace Attorney series, and I'm really interested with this inspiration, specifically the things that the developer felt didn't work in Ace Attorney, which I really like. If you look at some of Ryan Clark's games, that's actually where some of his interesting game ideas come from too. So he's got a version of Pong not Pong, Breakout, where instead of having this really extended period where you're trying to get that like one block, and you just for the life of you cannot manage to angle the paddle in such a way that you can get that single block, I believe the ball keeps getting bigger and bigger as you get closer to the end of the match. And then probably the better known of the games from Brace Yourself, Crypt of the Necrodancer, I believe had its origins in the fact that he really liked roguelikes, but wasn't crazy about the fact that you had no reason to make a sort of snap judgment, that you had you had all the time in the world between actions. And so what was originally supposed to be a timer eventually started to look a little bit like dancing, and then you put a music track over it. I think they said that it was Thriller. I'm not sure what specific song it was, but just again, one of those wonderful little bits of serendipity that seems like such a an obvious and great choice once you see it, but maybe isn't so obvious when you before you see what it is. So I'm always intrigued when I hear people talking about sort of repairing things they don't think work in games, and particularly popular games, right? Because like I don't think Ace Attorney is bad, and that's one of the things that I think is valuable here, right? It's not like Ryan Clark saying that Breakout or roguelikes are bad, but what he is doing is trying to address something that for him keeps them falling short of, I don't know if I want to say perfection, but certainly the best that they can be. And I think that there is some value in pursuing something like that. So in the case of in the case of Layton, I was a little intrigued to find that Ace Attorney was an inspiration, as well as apparently a series of sort of puzzle books that were popular in Japan that the author had fond memories of. And for me, I don't know, I always like that sort of stuff, because I imagine there's something very nice about being able to say, I loved this stuff when I was a kid, and now I found a way of creating something, that gives me that same feeling as an adult. And I actually kind of feel to a certain extent that might be what went into Zelda, based on what I heard, that apparently a large part of what went inside of the original Legend of Zelda games were kind of the designer talking about liking, exploring caves or exploring the world and trying to create a similar feeling to that. And I think to a certain extent, it's a successful game formula. So to a certain extent, people just want to continue making sure that you deliver on that expectations of the audience. Clearly, they do so in a way that allows them to iterate and add new things. But I think to a certain extent, that idea of discovery is still there, but in a way that I suppose we could compare to the Doom games that we've talked about. It's not trying to say that a specific manifestation of these ideas needs to be how you capture the feeling of the original game. In the case of Doom, sort of the death matches. In the case of Zelda, probably the exploration and discovery. But rather, it's trying to say, it's like, how do I capture that feeling, and maybe even some of those constraints that the player faces, but to do so in a modern context. And I think there's some value in that, because the easy way out and the safe choice is always to just do more of what happened before, but that's also stagnation. So, anyways, a whole bunch of stuff on games we're not actually not actually playing. So let's call Sandra Dorset.
V, you're V, right? You find the data bank?
Someone's back in tip-top shape. Trauma must have put you back together in no time.
Yep. Good as new. Still, if not for you, wouldn't have been anything left to put back together. Never got the chance to thank you properly. Wasn't there someone else with you? Big guy? Whenever you get a chance, tell him I said thanks.
Jackie's, Sure, I'll pass it on. Knowing Jackie, though, he'd probably take that as his cue to ask for your number, call you up for a date. But that'll never happen, because Jackie, never mind. I'm sure you got a lot on your plate.
Is everything okay?
Sure, yeah, of course.
Arasaka
So,
counter
did you
intel,
find my
ladies and
data
gentlemen.
bank?
Right to the chase, huh? Well, you'll never guess where I found it. A scav hunt. Sandra, you there?
Yeah, it's just that. Well, ever since they told me what happened, I just can't stop seeing them. I figured they must have had it. But, you know, it's not like I was gonna go looking for it myself after. I keep telling myself it's over. The ones who took me are gone.
Listen, you've got Trauma Team Platinum. You couldn't be in better hands. I'm sure they already fixed the Sig Jammer exploit.
True. But who knows what the scouts will cook up next time? Anyway, that's all in the past now. Got bigger fish to fry.
You want to talk about it?
It's nothing. Just bring the data back to my apartment. Sending you the address now.
Thanks.
Gotta turn around. So I'd forgotten that we'd started. I forgot that we'd started this mission. I thought this was the first step. If I recall correctly, I think if you try to break into the data pad but have a high enough intelligence or capability, she's a little annoyed at you for messing with the data, but you kind of get to talk shop, which smooths it over. I do kind of like that the game. Well, I can see how people may not necessarily like it, but for me, I do kind of like that the game sort of keeps you on your toes a little bit that way. I feel that is a sort of a legitimate consequence of choices that you make. But of course, then there's the instance where in The Beast in Me, where you're trying to defuse the situation, it actually results in Claire taking out the racer. That one I can imagine. I don't think I minded that, although I was definitely expecting a different result. And I think in the end, that's sort of a reminder that, you know, the world does not necessarily revolve around you. But on the other hand, there's, I guess a good example of this would be something like Sunless Sea, where it will give you probabilities. It'll tell you, you know, it's likely that you'll succeed, or it's not likely you'll succeed. And that at least gives you sort of an expectation. I think in some case it will even tell you, you know, you can lose health or something like that, so that you don't feel like you've put your run in jeopardy without being informed. But there can be consequences to that, right? Like in that case, really, the world does, to some extent, revolve around you. And I think probably it's the right call, because in the end, I think we don't get the benefit of all of our, I guess what I'm trying to say on this is, like, if you think about the decisions that you face in your own life, a lot of times we face a certain amount of uncertainty. Well, something's not loading, right? We do face a degree of uncertainty. It's not necessarily a comfortable or comforting thought, but it's the truth. And in some cases, you can say whether or not it's desirable to realize that, right? So the question could be, is there any value in making a game more like life, right? Do you make it more like a simulation, or do you do you instead try to find the fun bits? And usually you want to try and find the fun bits. But in the case of something like, especially Sunless Sea, and I'd argue to a certain extent this game as well, but definitely Sunless Sea, you have only the text descriptions going on. And while we face a lot of uncertainty in our own lives, we also just do have intuitions about situations where we face that we're faced with. So if you have someone who's offering you something and you have a funny feeling, you're probably less likely to get that from them. And it could be completely irrational. I think very often we ignore those feelings at our peril. Obviously, there are better and worse ways that can manifest. That's also kind of, I suppose, where intolerance lives. But there is something to be said for just kind of the feeling that we get on some of these things. And there's no good way to communicate that in a game, right? If you have, I'll just use Sunless Sea as an example because I know that they sort of give you an idea of consequence. Let's say instead of the idea of consequence, there would be an item on the list which tells you, I've got a bad feeling about this. Well, that's something unusual inside of the game, and so you're expecting the game to tell you something about that. And if it doesn't deliver on the bad feelings, then you're going to ignore that intuition, and then you're going to be mad when the bad thing does actually happen. Or it's going to give you perfect information, in which case you might as well just go with the instructions in terms of the game telling you the outcome. So I think in the case of the overall, like in the grand scheme of things, I think probably the Sunless Sea way of handling it probably is the best. It's the most fun, and if I'm honest, it's probably the most efficient in terms of aligning with our own kind of our own understanding and experience of the world. Because at the very least, if it's making a probabilistic statement, sometimes you get unusually lucky or you get unusually unlucky, just the same way that the hunches don't always turn out, but you sort of have some bounds around your expectations. So you don't feel hard done by if you have these, near certain failures and every once in a while one turns out. You probably feel a little saltier about the near certainty that doesn't turn out. That's just the way life is, really. But I think in general, it doesn't burden the game with a lot of extra stuff that in the end you don't really respond to, and it lines up kind of with our feelings of how the world should work.
Sandra, it's me, V. I got your data bank. Sandra? You in there?
Are you alone? Did anyone follow you?
What does it look like?
Come on. Don't like leaving the door open.
Still worried about the scavs? My, friend told me your memory'd be scraped clean.
The scavengers? No, I'm worried about... No, it doesn't matter. You bring the data bank?
If it's not the scavs you're worried about, then who?
Look, I didn't pay you to come here and ask me personal questions.
Hey, you mentioned it. Besides, I saved your life. That isn't worth anything?
It was worth whatever you got paid. Don't pretend I wasn't just another small-time job for you. Now, did you bring the data bank?
Here. Don't worry, it's completely intact.
When someone tells me not to worry, it usually means they're hiding something. You wouldn't happen to have seen what's inside, would you?
And ruin my cred? For what? A few bytes of data?
Funny you should say that. Because not long ago, the
Oh, I
data
did
bank's
check.
GPS sig suddenly went online. Which can only mean one thing. Someone booted it up and used it.
I'm just going to go ahead and say...
All right, you got me. I looked inside.
I actually
I
didn't
know
know
everything.
this.
That's what I thought. So what's your next move?
To congratulate you, of course. Anyone who hacks Nightcorp has earned my respect.
Oh. Well, thank you. You know, if they end up going through with it, then...
The net'll become even more dangerous. You were worried they'd find out about you.
Exactly.
Nightcorp's secured up the ass. Can't just upload the usual blackout and fire shaft. You must have whipped up some angry demons. You zip them up in an imp?
Yeah. Leviathan. Even Cerberus isn't enough if you want to punch through that kind of corpo ice.
Using AGI to condition workers' minds. That's some supervillain shit right there.
Not just workers. Anyone. That's the scariest part. You've been a big help. Here, I threw in a little extra for a fellow runner. It's good to be reminded I'm not in this fight alone.
Thanks. Be seeing you.
Jamie, how you doing? I'm glad it gave me a chance to sort of recover from the the embarrassing... well, maybe not embarrassing, but I genuinely did not realize that I had already opened the... I didn't realize I'd opened the file, so... Alright. I had worked out a plan 2 weeks ago, and I don't remember what we were going to do. So let's run ahead and do one of the police options. I don't think I wanted to go to the afterlife, but... part of this is just trying to... It's kind of funny. I don't know if there's a whole lot of value in me talking about the week that I had. It's probably just going to be a bunch of complaining, but I'm not 100% sure how to sort of ease back into things. You know, I feel to a certain extent the need to say every single... like, every single obvious action. I'm going to walk 50 meters towards the enemies. And I think that's fairly self-apparent given the heads-up display, but that's fine. We'll work it out. Obviously I messed that up, but we got through it. Treatment plan. For maximum muscle gain, I'd say Muscle Bustle, 100% guaranteed to work, though it does come with a host of side effects. Liver cirrhosis, high blood pressure, low libido, and erectile dysfunction, plus periodic rage attacks. The supplement is administered IM every 6 hours. If you're interested, please give me a call. Low libido, sign me up. Okay, so overall missions, I think it was anything that wasn't going to be sort of a solid yellow. So we've got the side jobs here. We've got X Factor, which maybe will be the last... Oh, hello. I wasn't expecting to see that, so... Creditor. Gotta pay a little visit to another choom who thinks he's too smart to pay back his eds with interest. Start off right with a good whack to the jaw, and if he stands his ground, do a full restock of his store. You'll get 10% of whatever you grab. So yeah, the original plan was to see what the different side jobs would give me, but I did want to... I kind of wanted to do the gigs as they emerged, so we'll see where we're... We'll see where we're at after I finish this one, and then assuming we're back where I thought where we were, we can probably get the side jobs done, and then we can start on some story missions. Maybe not by the end of tonight, but at the very least we can do that at the beginning of the next stream. Sorry, I thought I heard something fall over. Maybe that was just my bag. Ellen Ripley! So first of all, thank you very much for resubscribing for such a long time, Ellen Ripley. I realize it's not just that you subscribe to this channel, but I think I owe like half of the subscriptions that I have to you. But if the sorry is because of the digression that I had with someone on the like announcing lurking, I don't have a problem with that. What it is it's the one thing I have observed in some cases there are people in channels that I'm in where it's literally the only thing I've ever seen them say. And even then, that's fine, you know, to a certain extent. Sometimes it's just people, you know, letting them know that you care. Except that I'm like, I don't know, like, is that a conversation to say that you're lurking? So yes, please don't feel the need to apologize. Maybe I should never have said it, because it strikes me as the sort of thing that people might misinterpret. I think in the end, it's one of these ones where if people feel the need to say that they have to lurk, it makes me feel like maybe they feel the need to just announce their presence, like there's some kind of attendance, and I don't want people to feel like there's attendance. If they like hanging out, that's great. If they just want to listen, that's fine. I don't think they're stealing anything by listening to me babble. So, I don't know, I always feel bad if people feel some sense of obligation on streams, because it's, you know, it's leisure, right? You know, it's like if Succession or, I don't know, Severance or something like that expected you to, like, do a quiz or it wouldn't let you watch the next episode. That would be really horrible. You do. Communism, Mortal Kombat, Rule 34. You're a Renaissance milady. Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, we also do get to chat. I mean, obviously, if I had it my way, I'd take 24 hours of your attention. But, you know, we do get to chat every once in a while outside of the usual channels. So, but again, thank you very much for the resubscription, and please don't feel the need to respond to every last comment that I make, as I try to extend my engagement numbers. Actually, one thing I will say, I know Ellen Ripley's been someone who's had to deal with this mostly because of all the clips that I find on YouTube to share, but I've been watching the old Fox series House. I'm pretty sure that show's like 20 years old now. But it's great. I've never actually seen the full series, but I'm watching like the first couple of seasons, and I mean, there's just very good lines in it, but I still do really appreciate it from the perspective of you know, like as a recreation of Sherlock Holmes. I think there's some neat touches in it, but also just in terms of a new take on you know, on doctor shows. I thought they did a decent job of sort of bringing something fresh to a genre which obviously is kind of a mainstay of television. I was gonna say, I thought I've done this one before, but no, this is the one. I think this is the Militech base.
Hey, new gig on the horizon.
Militech detained a smuggler by the name of Bruce Welby at the border. His buddy wants him out. It's no surprise, but he needs someone to do the dirty work and make sure Bruce tastes freedom once again. Specifics attached.
Okay. SOS Merc needed. Rescue Bruce Welby. Coach Whip Lane? Sometimes you need a friend to lean on. Sometimes you need a friend to break you out of an immigrant detention center at the Night City SoCal border. Smuggler Bruce Welby required the latter. Bruce tried to cross the state line with hot cargo in tow, but it didn't work out as planned, and now he's been chained up by Militech border security already several days. His buddy and Militech employee, Archibald Crane, found out about the situation through the grapevine. I'll be damned if that cuckoo corpo didn't actually decided to help his friend instead of towing the corpo line. He contacted me to get Bruce out of his cage. You'll find the missing element in this friendship triangle. Find Bruce, break him out, and escort him to his chumbada, Archie. And let's make sure Militech doesn't notice a thing, okay? Get to it. One more thing. Archie says not to kill any corpos, so what can I say? The client's always right. Now, I don't recall if the... I believe the stealth kills should be, or not kills, but the non-lethal takedowns should be permitted, but I don't remember, so I definitely want to, I want to save to make sure that I'm not completely blowing it. Alright, that's a good start with the camera. Definitely feel like I should be doing better in terms of taking out cameras. I have a couple of ideas about how I'm going to do that. So the first round here is to tag up any Militech personnel that I can find. Second round's going to be marking up any... sorry, second round's going to be pinging and then seeing... Oh. Seeing what else I can shut off and mark up. Alright, so I think that takes me to where I started. I think at this point I probably shouldn't worry about perfection, but definitely the more of these cameras I can take off, the better. Let me try this. Okay, apparently I don't have ping. You know what, I think I got enough to make an attempt with. So this should be pretty straightforward to take out, I'd imagine. think that was gonna work. So maybe it'd be better for me to try a long way around. Ooh. Okay, that makes for a little bit of a complication, but... Oh boy. So clearly at some point here I'm going to need to do the I'm going to need to do a distraction. When makes all the difference though. Not great, but I should be able to get through it. I really don't like my chances here, but I'm committed. So now I get to see whether or not we're allowed to do non-lethal takedowns. Alright, I'm not gonna lie, it would be nice if I had a more secret place to put this guy, but... Okay, there's definitely a camera in this area. Oh, there's also a guy. I wonder if I can just get away with, okay, can't do system collapse. I mean, it wasn't elegant, but it worked. Tyler Bennett, surprise, the psych we got stationed here told me I should start journaling. Want to see what I wrote? Sure, hun, hit me. Day 1, dust, dirt, tumbleweeds. Day 2, dust, dirt, tumbleweeds. Day 34, dust, dirt, tumbleweeds. This is supposed to fucking help? For real. Starting to wonder who's prisoner here. Me or them? Just be patient. Only a couple weeks left. I don't think I can take it. Better try. Come on. You know you got someone waiting for you back home. Alright. So I don't think I need to worry too much about the baddies. I think we can probably just take the client out.
You Bruce.
Is this a test? You have my pro... Wait. You're in our Militech.
Easy, Chum. Archie sent me.
Archie? Archie Crane?
The very same. But don't go jumping for joy. Gotta get out of here.
Archie knew who to send.
You sat here long enough. Let's shake that rust off.
Don't have to tell me twice.
Okay, so this is going to be a bit challenging based on where all the people are. this guy turns around, I'm going to be very sad. So we should just be able to go out the front door at this point. Maybe passing up some opportunities to get some loot, but I'd rather take the objective rather than get a couple extra bucks. Come on, Bruce, you can do it. Oopsies.
Brucey, baby! We're starting to think we'd never get you out of that dump.
Archie, you piece of shit.
What?
It's because of people like you that camp even exists. I saw you behind the wheel. How much they paying you, huh?
Enough for me to buy your ticket out of here. You can thank me later. Right now, we gotta get moving. Oh, and V, if you ever plan on quitting Night City, careful around the borders. Accidents have a way of turning fatal.
V, I appreciate you handling things as cleanly as you did, and exactly as agreed. Bruce was freed and escorted back to Archibald. And the fact that you did it without unnecessary bloodshed isn't lost on me. The payment should be parked in your account by now. Contract closed.
So I'm trying to remember if there were any more Dakota missions or not. I'll obviously pick up the bonus, and then we'll see where the rest of the we'll see where the rest of the missions go. Rules were meant to be broken. Oh, well, never mind then. Why is it telling me to go through this then? Okay. Huh. I know we go through here as part of the, I think it's the Kang Tao transport mission. Probably would have been just better to follow the roads, but it's a fun digression. I was trying to think of any other sort of stories or things that I've read recently that merited bringing up. One thing that I was happy to pick up, but I can't quite hook into Cyberpunk at this point, is there's a lecture by David Krebs. So quite a good, I think he's Stanford Business School. Anyways, very, very good microeconomist. And if you've taken an econ course, a lot of these ideas are ones that will probably be familiar to you. But if you've never taken a course, then some of this stuff can seem very, very technical and arcane. So I'm going to try, especially because I'm feeling a little bit of silence, I'm going to try and fill in the details while I move on to the next mission. But this will get a bit technical for a bit for those of you who maybe don't have the same burning passion for econ that I have. So one idea that is, I'll say, controversial in economics, not in the, I mean, so there's a couple ways that this idea can come up. So one is when you say something's controversial, you get the idea of people going online and saying unpopular opinion, and it just winds up being the most bland sort of vanilla opinion possible. And that's like, whatever. Like, I don't feel the need to really engage with that. Oh. That was the last contract you'll see from me, V. Thank you for everything. I'm glad our paths crossed, and I hope they will again someday. I have a parting gift for you. It's already waiting for you in the garage. Take good care of her and think of me when you get behind the wheel. Safe travels, V. All right, let's turn around and pick that one up. In this case, I mean controversial just in the sense that it is an idea that I think people often criticize economics for. And I think it's because very often what is being attacked is like in my opinion, it's a straw man, but I don't necessarily think people are deliberately setting it up as a straw man. I think what they're doing is they are taking what they think when they hear certain terms and not necessarily taking what the definition says. So in the case of economics, particularly microeconomics, when you're thinking about individuals, you have these ideas of preferences. So you have these, people who are, they have a set of things that they like and don't like. And where this becomes controversial is usually the idea of rationality. So I think a lot of you will probably have heard the criticism of economics as kind of assuming that people are these perfectly rational calculating machines, and that's not really what rationality means. At least if you look at the definitions for most of them. What the assumption of rationality is it's bundling together a series of assumptions about the form that the preferences take. And as it turns out, they're actually ones that wouldn't necessarily, there's room to disagree with them, let's say. But very often the form of disagreement is quite different from what people attack when it comes to the idea of rationality. So what it doesn't mean is that you can do math very fast in your head. But what it does sort of mean is that you'll have preferences such that they have a kind of a consistent order. So if you like, if you like tuna compared to ham, and you like turkey more than tuna, I can tell that you're going to take a turkey sandwich over a ham sandwich. this, I think probably the best example of this not always working is, well, maybe it's not the best example. I think there's probably ways you could recast political decisions. But, I don't know, that's not a bad one. Like, you can sometimes see that there's sort of this circular relationship sometimes in terms of why people feel... Sorry, this is a very Canadian example, because we, you know, the third parties don't feel like a completely thrown away vote in some ridings. Another one that's maybe not fully sustainable, but it sort of depends as to whether or not the critique has teeth, but I think it's knowing about all your options. And so, you know, that would be one where, you know, if you're choosing, I guess the analogy would be if you're choosing a school and you're saying that you're, you know, you're trying to maximize, are you really considering, like, you know, the university in India if you live in Canada? Probably not, right? There's probably a subset of universities that you're considering. Although, again, for that one, I'm not 100% sure whether or not the that counterexample has a lot of teeth. But really what rationality winds up meaning when you think about these, some of these examples I'm thinking of, it essentially says that you have a, you know, well-defined set of preferences among your options, and that when you're making a decision in the face of some kind of budget constraint, you are going to go for the outcome that's most in line with your preferences, or utility maximizing. So in this case here, the idea is that, you know, I'm not going to achieve the best possible outcome for myself because I might be constrained by my budget. But it does mean that, you know, conditional on my budget, I'm not going to willingly choose something counter to my interests, counter to, you know, counter to the best achievable result for myself. So a lot of that has to do with sort of the consistency of the choices that I'm making. And, you know, we can quibble over whether or not rationality is the proper name for that, but I think that is certainly very different from the kind of the creature that a lot of people like to complain about, which is, again, the super calculating machine that always makes the right choice. It's actually quite neutral as to the value. So, you know, in theory, if you define a utility function that includes, like, flipping off a box of kittens, all it will say is that as long as that that gives you your maximum pleasure, chances are you're predicting that the person's going to flip off exactly one box of kittens, as long as they're capable of doing so. So one of the things that is kind of interesting about this, the way this is handled, though, and I remember this being something that I asked when I first learned about it, was this idea of changing preferences. So very often what will happen in these models is that you'll sort of take preferences as sort of set and given. And in some cases, there are sort of abstractions that happen to make that a manageable idea. So I think when you and I intuitively think about preferences, you know, I guess the best example would be of why people might be uncomfortable with that would be, I think a lot of us growing up probably were fussy eaters. But, you know, as you get older, I think most people kind of grow out of it and probably like a lot more foods than they do as kids. I'm, of course, speaking in general. There are people who maybe, maybe did the reverse, but I think, you know, we probably have an example where we've had a change of taste. And I think probably one of the ways that so I'm not really going to try and defend this so much as say, I think some of the ways that people can work within that framework, they'll talk about things like, you know, I think there's the permanent income hypothesis, and it's sort of the idea that you're trying to smooth out consumption over a lifetime, which is why you'll maybe go into debt at certain times or become a saver in other ones. and it's where you're sort of trying to achieve sort of this lifetime maximum, rather than spend the most when you're sort of at the peak of your career, and then you just sort of live in this absolute desperation when you're when earlier on in your life. Not to suggest that doesn't happen at all, but I think the idea here is that where you can, again, subject to certain constraints, you're going to try and achieve a certain level of consumption throughout your life, rather than I should say, you'll act as if you're trying to sort of smooth that out over multiple periods. And there's a couple of reasons to sort of see why that's a helpful model. But again, this is where we're starting to talk about very abstract ideas that are behave as if, as opposed to being sort of these ironclad rules about how people think. And I know that can be quite difficult, because usually what's happening are people are describing these mathematical models that have been built, and these they contain these simplifying assumptions that don't necessarily line up with intuitive understandings of people's behavior. But what they do wind up doing is they wind up fitting the observed behavior very well. But with that in mind, I was sort of wondering, for me, one question I'd sort of had about a lot of this was, where does advertising fit in all of this, right? Like, is this not an effort to try and change preferences? Is this, like, what exactly is the role of advertising, if not to change preference? And it was sort of explained to me that, like, there wasn't really a lot of room in these models for the idea of changing preferences. They were kind of taken as fixed, and you would you'd take them as is. Very often, you don't even necessarily put a strict set of, like, sometimes you're just describing a general form of the preferences, rather than saying that this person's going to eat exactly 5 heads of lettuce a week. But it was something that didn't have a lot of room for changing, and that struck me as a little strange when I learned it. But then, as I was kind of going through my studies, I realized, okay, well, this idea of shifting around preferences doesn't really seem to be present in a lot of the stuff that I'm studying, and I seem to be able to get pretty far in answering certain questions without without this extra assumption here. So I think I'll do the best with what I've got. But it turns out that this David Krebs lecture that I'm reading is dealing with this very specific question. As far as he's concerned, it is actually a problem that's worth taking on. And it is actually specifically a talk about introducing the idea of changing preferences in microeconomic models. Now, if you can give me a minute here, I've got, it's an hour into the stream. I'd like to get some water, and I actually don't think it would hurt to have a little bit of a stretch and just otherwise get myself straightened out. So I'm gonna step away for a little bit. I'll try to keep it reasonably short, but I know every time I say that, it winds up being longer than I was expecting. So I will leave you with many recommendations for products and services, and I'll try and be back as soon as I can. But I would recommend, especially if you've been here since the start, now would not be a bad time to get up, maybe have a stretch, get a glass of water, or otherwise take care of yourself. And then we'll be back to see whatever this side mission is in a little bit. All right. Sorry about the wait. So, yeah, let's see what the side mission is. Oh, this is probably the meditation. Probably could have done that over the course of the break. My bad. That's fine. Gives me a chance to.
There's not a soul on the earth who would wait for you as I have.
Gives me a chance to sip some coffee.
I'm starting to get used to these little meetings.
I sense you have many questions. I may answer only one.
What is it you're teaching me?
I am preparing you so that when the time comes, you will make the right choice.
What choice? When? All right. One question.
Are you ready for the final meditation technique?
The last one.
Yes. It will cost however much you want.
Hope this'll do.
I will guide you through the meditation. This is a meditation of the air element. We are in the mountains, heading toward the peak. We squeeze between two boulders. On the first boulder sits an eagle. The spirit of the air passes through every fiber of this eagle. Spirit of the air, primordial wind, I send you greetings. We are of one blood, you and I. You are within me, and I am within you. Without you, life would not last even a few minutes. So vital are you to us. Oh, great spirit of the air, please cleanse my body and soul. Relinquish pain, sickness, the negative energy from negative people, worlds, and dimensions. Give me the energy of life. Give me health, wisdom, knowledge, strength, joy, happiness, and lasting inner peace. I am an eagle. The wind cushions my wings, caresses my feathers, enters every fiber of my body, fills the spaces of every atom and molecule. The wind cleanses the body, the soul, and the subtle body. Circling upwards, we rise up high. We feel lightness, purity, joy. Our body is filled with happiness, peace, and harmony. We thank you, Spirit of the Air, with our mind, body, and soul.
And he is gone. At least he left something.
Fuck, I feel like a dog's shit.
You see that? There was a Zen master here, and poof, he vanished like that.
The fuck are you talking about?
He taught me how to meditate. It was kind of weird.
Not my scene. Go and talk to Misty if it bothers you.
Yeah, good idea.
I always kind of like the fact that they brought you to this area where the like the fence is kicked out. We've already read these, so I'm not gonna bother with them again. But I don't know if you go far enough, if there's like a little secret, or if it's just an opportunity for you to Mandela. If it's just an opportunity for you to feel like you have the option, but I always thought it was a nice little touch. Didn't realize that cost me money. Anyway, I'm happy to knock a few more things off of the map here. So again, just as a bit of a reminder. Oh, actually, you know what? I think there was a point where I was going to try and level up a few of my skills. I think I might have even made some notes to that effect. I'm definitely intrigued by Johnny's comment that I should talk with Misty, but I don't actually see any written encounters, so I think I'll probably do the side job in Afterlife first, even though I know there's the danger of starting the main quest, and then I'll do X Factor before I move on to the next steps. However, let's just take a second here. So Mr. Hands, 10 out of 10. Mumar, 10 out of 11. So, and I believe I need progress on the main quest before I can get the rest. Sebastian Ibarra, 11 out of 11. Dino Dinovic, 5 out of 5. Regina Jones, 23 out of 23. Wakako, presumably, I think it was 10? 8. Shows what I know. And then Dakota, presumably it'll say, yeah, 9 out of 9. Okay. So I don't think there's too many surprises in there. Again, I'll do the unlabeled side job first. But I'm going to take a quick second here because I seem to recall I had actually taken some time to work out what I wanted my my skills to be, and I don't remember if I wrote that down on Notepad or if I wrote that down on my tablet. Vanguard, how you doing? I don't think my sticky notes have much of a chance of survival, to be honest, but oh, here we go. I did a shocking thing. I wrote it on an actual piece of paper, which is why I couldn't find it. All right. So I think the easy one for me is the relics. I've got one relic point. I'm kind of going to play some of this by ear, but so our options here are data tunneling. When an enemy is affected by a monowire uploaded quick hack, normal monowire attacks which hit that enemy and other enemies simultaneously will spread the quick hack to them. But the thing is, I'm not using monowire, so not too much value there. We've got launch capacity overdrive, +1 charge for the projectile launch system. Well, similar idea here, right? We don't have the projectile launch system. And we've got spatial mapping. All leap attacks with mantis blades now cripple enemies and increase dismemberment chance against those same enemies for 10 seconds. Well, I mean, we've also got that. We don't have mantis blades, so I guess we don't have it. Like, well, now I know why we didn't. Now I know why we didn't put the last point in the relic, I guess. So. I think previously I'd been talking about the idea of maybe getting cool up to a certain level. So, oh yes, I remember now. Hang on. So I've got 12 attribute points, and I think I was going to put 8 of them into reflexes. Yeah, so we've already got the item here. One thing that I could do would be to take a look at the various skills that I want. So under Intel, counter a hack. So when you're the target of an enemy netrunner, you can quick hack them back through walls and obstacles. Works for me. And copy paste. When you're the target of enemy netrunner, using quick hack against them will also spread the quick hack's effects to their allies. Force kill cipher, I believe, reduces the length required to hack access points by 1. Total sequence length cannot be reduced below 2 characters. And then system overwhelm was one that I wanted. I made some notes after the last. Yeah, there we go. +7 quick hack damage for each unique quick hack and dot effect affecting the target. So I think that was it for Intel. Now under cool, one of the considerations for cool was basically like, what am I trying to do with this? So for instance, I do have the option of leveling it up to legend. I don't recall how high I need to go to get to legend. But the question here would be, do I really need some of these abilities? So for instance, we've got Nerves of Tungsten Steel, only affects revolvers, precision rifles, and sniper rifles, which I'm currently not using. So when Deadeye is active, guaranteed crit hits for headshots and weak spots, increased damage at as distance increases. So one I can see myself using, and yet it's hard for me to say, like, what new arrangement of weaponry am I going to arrange for that to happen? The other alternative would be run and gun. Hip firing does not consume stamina. When focus is active, 25 movement speed. This isn't bad, but again, it means that I need to give up potentially 5 attribute points. And then style over substance, I don't have any throwable weapons, so that one doesn't help me too much. So right now, it's hard for me to say that there's anything that cool directly gets me as far as these skills are concerned. But what I did write down looks like Deadeye, so I wanted 3 points in that. So pistols, revolvers, precision rifles, and sniper rifles. So at least this gets me the pistol, right? So 10% headshot and weak spot damage, 25 cost for shooting, and then unlocks Deadeye mode, which is active above 85% stamina. When active, 20% headshot damage, 20% weak spot damage, and no bullet spread. So 3 levels of that. Long shot was another one. So when Deadeye is active, your shot always deals full damage regardless of distance. Quick draw. 30% weapon swap speed when swapping to pistols, revolvers, sniper rifles, and precision rifles. 30% stamina when swapping during combat. And then High Noon. When Deadeye is active, 35% reload speed for your next reload after neutralizing an enemy via headshot or weak spot. Effect available for 3 seconds. Slows time by 50% during reload. And looks like I did have a note here to go for California Reapers. 30% stamina after neutralizing an enemy with a ranged attack via headshot or weak spot. Doesn't strike me as like the most important thing for me to go for, but why not, right? I don't feel... I mean, I can see myself maybe doing some of these, but I'm gonna just leave it be and see what we have for perk points. Okay, tech, all things cyber. Chrome Constitution. Okay, so this 10% to all cyberware stat modifiers, minus 20% cyberware capacity cost for cyberware in the integumentary system and skeleton. Chrome Constitution, minus 5% incoming damage if all integumentary system and skeleton cyberware slots are filled. Renaissance Punk, plus 4 cyberware capacity for each attribute at 9 or higher. So, of course, that's going to potentially affect how I distribute my points. Lucky Day. 25% crafting components from looting. Driver update. All cyberware gain an additional stat modifier. Chipware Connoisseur. When upgrading cyberware, you can choose from 2 stat modifier options. Third option's available at tier 3 and higher. And I have no idea if I put down any of these other ones. Looks like I did. So 10% to cyberware stat modifiers. Yep. Not super convinced I need these, though. So I'm going to leave it there. But then we go to reflexes. I think that's when we start making some choices here. I can definitely see the assault rifle path working for me here, but I actually can't really discern this this note that I've written here. So I suppose one thing I would observe would be when I went for Renaissance Punk, each attribute 9 or higher, so it would seem to me that I want to take reflexes and body to at least 9. So that leaves me with 8 attribute points. So I know I was trying to go for reflexes, but it's not so clear to me why. Can definitely see these helping though. Now I've only got 2 attribute points, so the rest is probably academic at this point. I've got 14 perk points. I might actually write this stuff out just to see, to give myself a little bit of a wish list. Okay, so if I say for reflexes, do I want stunt jock? I don't hate this, but maybe we'll leave it aside. I can definitely see ready, rested, reloaded, so... Yeah, I can see those 3. And I can also see sharpshooter. I'll say 3 for this just for the sake of simplicity. So that's 2, 5, 8, 11. So that would just leave us with 3 points overall. So LMGs and HMGs doesn't help me at all. Yeah, I don't need anything else in body. So intelligence, vehicle quick hacks allow you to remotely take control. Yeah, no, that's fine. Don't have a smart weapon. Traceability, duration, lower RAM. Can see speculation maybe. Neutralizing with combat quick hack is the part that... So maybe I just want the 1. Okay, for cool... Maybe blind spot? Ninjutsu would be really nice, but I don't have that many points left. I also don't know what mitigation chances are. So for all that, we're at 11, 12, 13. We actually have 1 point left over. So at this point, maybe we go... yeah, we're going to take all of these. So we got 3 perk points left. I could see myself doing ninjutsu. Yeah, you know what? We'll go for that. It's a little different from what I was expecting. So then, again, the remaining question is, what do I want to do with the remaining points? I think in this case, I'll actually boost my lowest, which is body. And that's just to maximize my options when the time comes for like for challenges. So of course I'll feel bad if I needed higher cool and higher reflexes, but and I don't know, maybe we'll go I'm now committed. And there may be a chance for me to buy some more hardware and such, but I'm not in a rush to pick those up. Although it would be nice at some point to maybe work out exactly what kinds of weapons and, I don't know, loadouts. So this is one thing, right, is that this is an RPG. Generally, with RPGs, you do work out what kind of build you're doing and trying to work that all out. But I've gotten far enough in this game. Like, I've done the whole DLC without really needing to upgrade my character. I do it more so to get the options when I'm... I do it for the options when I'm in, like, certain dialogue options and that. But the problem is that I've been doing so much of the game without these upgrades. It's like hoarding all the grenades or whatever in, you know, in games with inventory. So I did want to make sure that I committed the points. And I may wind up regretting it, but it's a chance for me to I don't know. It's a chance for me to experiment. I figure if I'm sufficiently interested, I can always do another round where I try to build things properly. So I'll confess I don't remember exactly what mission this is, but I think it's one... I think it does take place in the afterlife, and it's just you run into a... you run into the client at one of the tables. I also seem to recall the afterlife would cause the frame rate to drop a bit, so I'm curious to see how it holds up. Maniac! One of the funny things about this song is there's no reason for me to associate it with this other game at all, but it does make me think of Satellite Rain because I saw El Canoe play Satellite Rain. So yeah, basically foreign languages are the only point of comparison, but it's definitely what makes me remember it. All right. Looks like I got it wrong.
What now? Call for backup? Crack some heads open, drag the bodies inside?
Hey,
In you go.
All right, so I definitely don't want Ghost Town.
Hey, V. Good to see you. How's it going?
Junior mine earned a spot on the menu here.
The chulo bowl with the bun? Yeah, sorry to hear.
Remember his drink? The recipe?
Vodka on the rocks, lime juice, and ginger beer.
And a splash of love.
That's right. And the drink's name.
Jackie Wells.
Right. Well, the first Jackie Wells is on me.
This is booming, I hope.
Seen it yourself. Can't complain. Folks always get thirsty, and we're here when they do.
How's the afterlife? Working here.
No real complaints. Fights are rare, and when they do happen, they're over quick.
Killer clientele, am I right?
Your words, not mine.
Thanks.
No problem. Just holler if you need anything.
V, hey, come here, let's talk.
How's the arm holding up?
Ah, V, such a tender soul you are.
Come on, Tiny. Being serious.
Well, after paying you and Regina your due, I still had eddies in the bank for this bet. So yeah, I'd say the arm's fine.
So, ran into Big Pete. Both got a wicked talent for finding trouble.
Yeah, told me you helped him out. I put you as the emergency contact for the whole fam. Who knows when my mom or pop will need a hand in a hurry.
Sure. Think I can even toss in a family discount. You ever need help with something? Just give me a holler.
Let's not get too cocky, all right? You did Regina and I both a favor. Not like we're about to forget that anytime soon. Life of a merc's got its ups and downs. Next time it'll be me pulling you out of some colossal fuck-up.
So long as I got the eddies on me. Am I right?
Ain't wrong.
You ever need help with something?
Let's not get too... You did Regina and I both a favor. Life of a merc's got its...
So long as I got the...
Apparently I'm not allowed to sit. There we go. Ah.
Let me be plain. Again. Solve your own problems.
Go fuck yourself.
Hey, interested in some work?
Doing what?
A business opportunity. Cargo transport. Get from A to B, quick and quiet. Interested?
You ought to run this by a fixer first.
Fuck the middleman. They're cash drained.
Attitude like that won't get you far in this line of work.
I don't need a consultant. I need a transporter. Will you do it or not?
I'm listening.
It's simple. You go to the Kabuki waterfront, collect the package, give me a call, then I tell you how to deliver it. Very straightforward.
Yeah, everything except my pay.
Don't worry, there's a bonus in it for you. Imported and duty-free.
Duty-free and detail-free.
Yes, but altogether fair. It's a simple job, generously compensated. Do you accept?
Yeah, sure, I'm in.
Good. I knew we'd find acceptable terms. Head to the Kabuki waterfront, then search for a fridge with the words, "No future." Once you locate it, collect what you find inside, then call me for further instructions.
Till then, I guess.
So if I recall correctly, this one winds up being a very valuable item. Although it doesn't seem to be that... I don't seem to actually have the details of the... Oh. There we go.
Hey, come here, let's stop.
Jam, hang on just a little longer, too. Reaper's on the way.
Let's see if I can get my... Actually, not. We'll walk it and then see what happens if I summon my vehicle. I wouldn't normally go here this way, except that I kind of want to see if I can just get my car, like, not dented. And I'm going the wrong way, apparently. And now I'm going the right way. This reminds me every once in a while when I first went to Montreal and I kind of stepped on a street. Felt like the cars sped up and like turned on their wipers. Fortunately, in this world, getting hit by a car apparently doesn't do much. Alright, 200 meters or thereabouts. See? No hospital trip, nothing. Ah, yes. But we have a chance for Road Tracer, too. I think we're gonna do Roach Race first. Ah. I think I could use some practice on the distances and such, but I tend to find, I mean, this is true for most games, but on this one, the more I'm focused, the less likely I seem to be getting to a max score. Very often, I don't realize how far I've gotten on the ones that I've done the best. I guess it's a little bit like the idea of flow, but it'd be hard for me to say that I felt flow playing the game. But definitely the less I pay attention to it, the better I've sort of done. Of course, the challenge is that a certain level of distraction means I just wind up making a careless mistake. But the fear of careless mistakes is also the sort of thing that causes me to become conscious of the game again, and that usually means I make a poor judgment call and pay for it. Also, this could all just be ex post justification for my behavior. What I should maybe do before I do a round of Roach Race, though, may not be a bad idea for me to look at the high scores just to see what I'm working with. Because I remember there was one... I think there was one instance where I was very close to the high score, and I think I got a little reckless near the end, so if I just played it safe for a couple seconds longer, I would have been at the top one, and then we could actually focus on Cyberpunk as opposed to the using it as the wrapper for the true game. Still, it's fun. There was actually one thing I wound up doing over the week, which I didn't really think to mention. I don't think this is really going to turn out, but I was talking about how I'd found the DS. And one thing that's really wonderful about the DS, this comes from, I think it might be a Designer Notes podcast with Tyler Sigmund. He's one half of the founding team behind Red Barrels. Not Red Barrels, Red Hook, the developers of Darkest Dungeon. And they talked about developing on the DS. But the impression that I get about the DS is that there was a definite feeling that it made new things possible. And I really like that idea about a console, because I also think that there's just a certain type of game that came out of the DS which, to me at least, definitely does feel like people feel enabled to try out new and interesting things. And I don't know, I feel, in a lot of games, you're going to wind up in situations where, I don't know, like, people try a gimmicky thing and it doesn't work out. So, and this is true for just about every entertainment form, right? So, The Lady of the Lake, the Raymond Chandler story, was a first-person movie way back in, like, the 50s or something like that. It didn't work, but man, am I happy they tried, right? Because, I mean, let's face it, cinema did not end. We have plenty of good movies. But by allowing people to experiment, to try things that maybe didn't work out, things didn't become stagnant, and I think we often, I can see how playing it safe is very desirable in a lot of situations. But it's sort of these short-term wins at the expense of long-term growth that you maybe never realize. So it's why I try not to get too harsh on experiments. So like, if I wanted to be unkind, I would point out that the DS didn't just give rise to sort of like the whole Brain Age series of games, which I don't necessarily think are bad ones. I don't know if they're all that founded in in research, but I mean, like, puzzle games are not a. I don't think the world is worse off for having more puzzle games. But there's also a lot of sort of Brain Age clones, which weren't necessarily all that inventive. I think there's a lot of things, a little bit like the idea of a first-person movie. You can also turn around and say, well, what about 3D? Well, there's some truly wonderful 3D movies like Avatar, and then there are some 3D movies which are a complete waste of time in 3D or 2D. And it's not always easy to tell which ones are going to be in advance. I mean, obviously, something like Avatar, you've got a talent like James Cameron attached to it, so those are maybe a little more likely to produce interesting things. But, very good filmmakers have made not very good movies in the past, so, it's not a guarantee this stuff's going to work out. But I was reflecting on it a little bit, and the fact that Nintendo really, I think, almost throughout its entire life has more or less built itself on the idea that it's not necessarily going to compete on the hardware, but it's going to sort of control the platform. It's going to control the games on the platform, and it just sort of really makes its bread and butter the sort of prestige titles like the Marios and the Zeldas and such. No. I wasn't that close after all. It's 33, so I'd like to try this again, but let's do the rest of the mission, and then we can spend some more time on Road Tracer or Road Trace. But yeah, I kind of like this idea, and I think the thing is that DS is old now. In fact, I don't even know. I have no idea if there's the no future container. I have no idea if Nintendo ever intends to make sort of a standalone.
Oh, shit. He's in rough shape, but alive. Let's hear what Dennis has to say.
Hey, got a status? Find the package?
You could have told me the package was a man.
If it was a box of bananas, I'd use the post office. Get over it.
Well, who is he?
The ambassador to Mexico. Jesus, it doesn't matter who he is. I prepared a car for you. Put the man in the trunk and head to Northside. The address is in the GPS.
Okay.
One more thing. Watch for tigers. They've got their sights trained on your new companion.
Wait, what? Asshole hung up.
I thought I did this mission already, but clearly not. Probably not a bad idea for me to just do the do a ping at this point. Well, I wanted to do the system collapse. Drop him, damn it! I don't remember what I was talking about before this. Yeah, for some reason I thought that was like the Bart Moss computer or something along those lines, but I guess that might be something later. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So, with regards to sort of how Nintendo did its whole, organized itself and sort of what their priorities were in terms of, or kind of the standards that they had and some of the things that they enabled. As a net, I'm really interested in the DS. It's obviously not something that would be pushing graphical fidelity and yet created very memorable games and ones that are not necessarily easy to... I think this is one thing that's also hard to appreciate, is that they're games that are actually quite hard to replicate in other forms, right? So yes, you can do DS versions of... Or so you can do PC versions of DS games, but you do miss out on a lot of the features that made it unique. So what I was sort of thinking of is like, well, we live in an age of like Raspberry Pis and things like that. So is it actually possible to make a DS style system? Now, part of this may be the challenge of talking to LLMs and such, but one of the challenges that I ran into with the Raspberry Pi is that I'm familiar with sort of the single board computer, like the Raspberry Pi 5, which is actually a pretty capable computer if what you're looking for is like a machine to do some work on. So I don't think it would be one where maybe you'd... I don't think it's one where you'd try to run Cyberpunk on it or something like that. But let's say you want something to explore the world. Maybe you'd want to run like Mathematica on it or something, or maybe you'd like to do some simplified computing.
Job's done.
I see that. Well done. Excellent work. Holding in there all right, Hariyoshi?
Dennis gave me hope.
So who is this guy?
He'll tell you his story. Hariyoshi?
In Japan, brain sergeant, top of all. Good instinct. One day, Tiger Claw boss needs surgery. But both die on table. Tiger Claws were very angry. I hide in boat, swim to America. Here, Dennis saved me. But there is secret. I killed Tiger Claw boss on purpose. World best surgeon, make no mistake.
Early warning about the Tigers would have been nice.
I had a hunch you'd manage this just fine. Given that you're here now, I see I was right.
This is all very heartwarming, but you haven't paid me yet.
I know. Here.
May this blade serve you well.
What's your name again?
Brain sergeant, world best. Good instinct.
What's your name again?
Brain sergeant, ワールドベスト。グッドインスティンクト。
Apparently my...
Where are you from exactly?
ブレインサージョント。ワールドベスト。グッドインスティンクト。
For some reason my mouse wheel seems to like to go one extra spot. Ah, okay, so it does pay to repair my vehicle. Good to know. What was I going to say? So yeah, I understand the single board computer a little bit better as a computer. So I kind of like the Raspberry Pi because it gives you stuff like Mathematica. And sure, you're not going to sit down and do any heavy duty computing with it, but very often the stuff that you'll benefit from Mathematica with won't necessarily be, you know, it's like you're not going to open a quant trading firm out of it. And like, Mathematica is not the only option. There's lots of fun Python stuff that you can do, but at the very least, Mathematica has documentation and books that you can work with. And I love Python, but sometimes people don't necessarily, you know, if you read the documentation, you get the impression that you should have a pretty good foundation from something other than the documentation sometimes. So, but the challenge is that if you want to play a game, you're generally going to need some pretty powerful hardware, and that's going to be the thing that the Raspberry Pi doesn't do for you. But the thing I was sort of reflecting on a little bit was you've got this DS. It's quite a small device, and it has 2 screens on it. And I believe the spec of the DS was that both screens needed to have equal performance. So one of them has the touch screen, admittedly with a stylus, but in general, it's going to be something that if you wanted to play video on, you would expect the same quality of video on both of those screens. And so it's something that made me think, like, is this something that the Raspberry Pi is capable of? Because of course, as far as hardware is concerned, I actually think let's take a quick minute and look this up. Because I remember looking this up once upon a time, Nintendo DS. So the CPU for the Nintendo DS, 67 megahertz ARM 946ES. ARM 9 is a group of 32-bit RISC ARM processor cores licensed by ARM Holdings for microcontroller use. The ARM 9 core family consists of, lists a few others. And I believe the 33 megahertz ARM 7 was about audio processing. In terms of the cartridge save, 256 kilobytes of flash memory, and then for RAM, 4 megabytes of RAM. So now, of course, this is for a handheld device in the mid 2000s. So certainly a very very modest system requirements, as opposed to, I'm going to just take a quick look here on, probably just take a Wikipedia. Actually, you know what? The best thing I can do here is just do Raspberry Pi. I'm sure if I scroll down, so yeah, the Model B, which is 2012, features a 700 megahertz single core 32-bit ARM 11 CPU. And apparently also has a GPU, 512 megabytes of RAM, and a 26-pin GPO header. So clearly, just a whole other world in terms of capabilities. Raspberry Pi 5, released 2023, 2.4 gigahertz quad-core Cortex A76 CPU, Video Core 7 GPU, PCIe support, and options for 2, 4, 8, or 16 gigabytes of RAM. Omits the 3.5 millimeter audio-video jack. But the challenge is here, while Raspberry Pis can be quite small, they're about the size of a credit card, it's a little hard to imagine something the size of a Raspberry Pi in something the size of a DS. So this is the thing I'm sort of wondering, is like, clearly there is this massive improvement in terms of technology, especially the Raspberry Pi 5, which reflects, 2023 tech, so like 2 decades basically. But it does make me wonder, if you wanted to make some kind of equivalent DS today, would you be able to do that, and how? And the part that I wasn't clear on would be the other set of controllers. So there's the Zero series and the Pico series from Raspberry Pi. So Raspberry Pi Zero, I think, is like a gigahertz CPU. But at that point, it makes me wonder, how do you connect the monitor? Is it possible to do, touchpad and things like that? So I did try to talk to an LLM about it, because like sometimes I find it kind of fun to see, like, get something to write a plan for you, and then go and sit down and read the manuals, and then compare your understanding of the manuals with what the tool generates. But what fascinated me here was that it was very insistent that I needed a Raspberry Pi 5 in order to create an equivalent to a DS, which just struck me as so ridiculous, because it's not just like, again, you're talking about a system which had, two processors admittedly, but 167, 133 megahertz, whereas the, Raspberry Pi 5, you've got a quad core at 2.4 gigahertz. So even if you could take one of those cores, multiply it by quite a bit, and you theoretically are not even touching, like at some point you need to wonder just how much overhead there is to run, Linux or something along those lines. So, but there is a side of me that says, in the case of Nintendo, they are building custom hardware specifically for the purposes of making games. So there is also a certain point where I think, maybe there is actually a challenge in terms of realizing the capabilities of something like a DS using some of these, these more general purpose computing options. So it was a fun little fancy, but it wasn't something I could really deliver too much on, just because, it's one of these things where I feel like I would need a stronger background in terms of some of the computing details to meaningfully deliver on. Still, it's I have probably more Raspberry Pis than I know what to do with, so it might be fun to try and come up with some proper uses for them before I buy more hardware. But I feel like it would be fun. I'd actually, specifically, the thing I would find most interesting to do is not just try and make an equivalent to a DS, because I don't think it's that hard to find a DS. At the very least, I have a DS. But what I'd be most interested in would be to make something like a DS, but to deal with the basically deal with the limitations of the hardware and see how much you can push your existing tools. This is one of the reasons why I wanted a bit of a better understanding in terms of how Nintendo pulled off the DS. Because, of course, one of the ideals would be that you have as low of a power requirement as possible so that you can get the most life out of the battery. But, of course, you could do like an absolutely minimalist, console by having just sort of a single LED light, and the games would be based entirely around sort of the on-off state of an LED light. Not exactly a fun system. But you could sort of say, well, yeah, that satisfies the whole trying to manage severe hardware limitations and maximizing battery life. So the idea here is more how do you balance those competing priorities? Anyways, separate conversation for another time. I realize I'm a bit early to finish tonight, but I did start rather late, and I do notice that it's dropped off a little bit in terms of audience. Now, I never like the idea of sort of saying is like, I will punish you all for not watching, but I really could stand, but given the fact that I needed to miss some streams this week because of the work, I would really like a chance to just get a proper good night's sleep, which hasn't happened in a while. And I'd really like to be able to, just kind of reset so that in the oncoming week and such, I can just get back to, I can get back to usual. So do some Ace Attorney and such. I do also notice that Prosciutto Fist is currently playing Clair Obscur Expedition 33, the new hotness. And I figure it's always nice to be able to raid someone, because I haven't been able to do that the last couple of streams. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I do apologize for the early ending, but that's probably the last of the early endings for a bit. I want to try and get back on track. So thank you everybody for watching. And for those of you here for Cyberpunk, we will see you in a week. And for those of you who just want to see any old game being played, I fully intend to be back on Monday. No clear idea yet which game I want to play. The ones I've been switching between have been Uplink, Uncle Chop's Rocket Shop, and Ace Attorney. And I like all three, so we will see how the muse moves me on Monday. Some of that will depend on what the work situation's like. Anyways, let's raid Prosciutto Fist, and then I'll have that awkward silence while the raid counter heads down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Revive Snow, thank you very much. When I was getting ready to do the raid, I noticed your name inside the chat, but I never like calling out lurkers. It's I figure people who want to talk will talk inside the chat. But for those of you who don't know Revive Snow, this is actually one thing that's nice about having the bot. Wonderful fellow Canadian broadcaster, somebody I like hanging out with. All sorts of madness at work this week. Revive Snow. But anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful evening. For those of you who haven't checked out Revive Snow, excuse me, please do check out their stream. We're going to be hanging out with Prosciutto Fist tonight. And based on that yawn, I think I'm just going to go to bed. Have a good night, everybody, and see you Monday. Take care.